Hello and welcome to Grody UnPrOfesSiOnAL. My name is Justin McMenamy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons I have acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. In this episode, we debate if it was in fact a goose that laid the golden egg, as well as sharing the long-held secret that most leaders are merely winging it. Jeff Snowden, my good man, it is so good to welcome you to the first anniversary episode of Grody UnPrOfesSiOnAL. Welcome.
I'm so Grody feeling about it. I love it. I'm both giddy and Grody.
So in most every episode that we've done throughout the first year, we have had a purpose, we've had a goal, we've had an intention to teach about leadership. We have thrown all of that to the side for this episode. This episode is simply about having fun and talking about some grody and unprofessional topics and having the maximum amount of fun while we do so. Today, what we have decided to do is the angry birds of management. And this is a topic that, if I remember correctly, you're the one that planted the seed on the angry birds of management, and it has now flowered into an entire episode, and we are about to find out if that flower smells good or, in fact, if that flower smells horrible. Do you remember how we got started on the angry birds?
I was the angry bird that ate the seed and then distributed it through my droppings.
That's right.
The angry birds discussion, it really was grown up out of, you and I were talking about the subject of people who've existed in the business space and the government space that just did dastardly things. It's awful. And, you know, if I can't necessarily deal with it straight on, I can at the very least make fun of it. We look across these personalities of all these people and these bad things they do. It just so happened that they beautifully coincided with birds. So that's where this list got kind of started, and I think it took on its momentum because of its accuracy.
I have done more research on birds in the last 2 weeks than I have ever done in the totality of my life. A few things that I learned about birds eliminated some people from the list. I learned that ostriches do not actually put their head in the sand when they're afraid. They have nests that are in the sand, and they'll put their beak in to root around and move eggs around. So I had to take the ostrich largely off the list. I thought that was going to be a perfect one. And then who knew a bat actually isn't a bird? So the bloodsucker, the one that flies at night, that couldn't make the list either. So we'll start with the honorable mentions, the ones that don't actually exist.
I want to put a little contrarian in that one. Ostriches can be downright nasty, okay?
Yeah.
They can be downright nasty. A bird that everyone assumes puts its head in the sand when it's scared, but actually is super duper vindictive and violent. Is he hiding from this? No, he's going to try to gut me with that sickle.
He's going to run at me at full speed, and with his inverted knee, he's going to donkey kick me in the face at 30 miles an hour. That's what he's going to do.
I bet several of those people.
That's right. All right, Jeff, where do you want to go? Where do you want to start on the angry birds of management today?
One that I had from my list that I liked particularly is the seagull. I love the seagull. Okay?
The seagull.
I've always kind of equated seagulls, at least in my experience, with the consultants. The seagull flies in really quickly as soon as they spot an opportunity. Okay, they fly in. They eat up all the resources. They make a whole lot of noise. All their friends come.
Right.
And then as soon as they showed up, they take a crap on everything and fly away. Man, I've seen some flocks of seagulls, and I don't mean the band. I've seen huge flocks of seagulls.
The other part about the seagull that helps line it up that way is that they're actually one of the birds that exists all over the world. Wherever you are in the world, there are seagulls, and I think that would fall into the category of the consultant. They are absolutely opportunistic feeders, and they consume anything. They will eat anything, and as soon as the resources are gone, they're gone as well.
Don't forget when they come in and take a crap on everything. And your point that they're all over the world, just go to any consulting website and be like, our global reach.
When I thought of the seagull, I actually thought of the group of leaders that flocks towards whatever the buzzword of the era is. So if you have a CEO that starts talking about electrification, for instance, there's going to be managers from all over the company that have never thought a second about electrification at all, but now are going to race towards electrification. And any job posting in that part of the company is just going to be filled up with seagulls immediately. And then as soon as electrification falls out, they all fly away and they chase SaaS or they chase machine learning. That's what I always think of when I thought of the seagull, is like, you're not from here. You don't want to live here. You're just here because there's resources right now. As soon as they're consumed, you're flying off to something else.
Let me add a little something to that.
Yeah.
Do they intellectually engage the subject, or do they just repeat what the boss said?
Well, see, now you're moving to a different bird.
Yes,
right? You're
am.
moving entirely to a different bird there. You're going to the parrot, which can repeat over and over and over again anything that it's heard.
As long as you give it
it's
a cracker.
not intellectually engaged with those words whatsoever. My great-grandfather and grandmother owned a parrot. My grandmother's name was Josie, and my great-grandfather taught the parrot to say, "Josie's a cow." The parrot had no idea what a cow was and actually had no idea who Josie was, but was willing to say it over and over again because they got a cookie every time that they say it.
Just change that dynamic out with like a director that wants to be a senior director, and they're sitting in a meeting and they're like, have we thought about automation on this? We could be talking about the lunch order. Have we thought about automation? You know what? He's really got a good point over there. Throw him one of your crackers. Throw him a sun chip. Sounds great.
Let him have it. You talked about the seagull being the consultant. For me, the consultant was the penguin. And here's why I went with the penguin. One, dressed very nicely. Got the tuxedo on. Typically exists in environments that have lost all their resources. It's a desolate place. There's nothing there. Above the ice, they look like they're moving slowly. They're not intimidating. But it's actually below the ice. It's after the meeting. It's between the meetings when nobody's looking. These dudes can fly. And that's where they're actually predatory, is under the ice, not above the ice. Above the ice, it's all slow and waddling along. But as soon as the meeting's over, they go below the ice and it is no holds barred. They are fast, nimble, and ruthless underneath the ice.
See, you know a thing about birds that I don't know. To me, for a penguin to truly fit a consultant, you need to have one penguin who's really well-dressed, and then 8 more small penguins following behind him wearing a laptop backpack with the name of their MBA program on it.
That's right. What else you got? What other one did you come up with?
The cowbird.
The cowbird.
So the cowbird comes in and lays its eggs in the nest of another bird. Doesn't make a nest of its own. Convincing enough to get the other bird to nurture those eggs. And then as soon as the cowbird eggs hatch, they push the bird's other eggs out of the nest and kill them. It's like somebody comes in from Johnson, Smithson, and Williams, and they're like, we've looked at everything. We're very smart, very smart. And we've decided you need to hire Johansson to be your VP of this and VP of that. Well, the next thing you know, Johansson hired 10 people from wherever they're from. They brought in their people. And next thing you know, like your original people are getting pushed out of the nest. One thing that I've seen happen is companies allow this phenomenon to happen so much that they push out all of their institutional knowledge. And then they go back to making the mistakes they made like 15 years earlier.
It breaks from the bird analogy here for a moment, but any organization that is moving through the business life cycle from its original founder-led into the barbaric phase, into the builder-explorer phase, into the administrative phase, if you follow that arc, it's going to start with a cowbird mentality. You're going to have one leader that comes in and starts prioritizing a different style of leadership or a different background or a different approach. That's going to have both active and passive change-outs in the organization. And what ends up happening is the organization essentially is rebuilt in the image of the new leader. To use the cowbird analogy, it starts with that one egg that's different than the rest of the eggs in the nest. And what does that cowbird do when it's born? Not only does it consume up the resources, it'll actively push the other birds out of the nest to the point that it's the only remaining species in there. That's part of the life cycle of business. And I think the cowbird is how it starts most often is, hey, we got a whole bunch of the leaders that aren't our future. That's how it's positioned, right? This is where we need to be in the future. We need to be more professional. We need to have more metrics. We need to have more visibility. We need to have more analysis. We need less gut feel. Essentially what that means is we're going to start trading in people that are of the new style and trading out people of the old style. And the trade out is either because of downturn layoffs or just people get the hint.
As a higher level leader, that's your job to stop those things. That's your job. Any more than if you pulled into the office and someone was dumping a dump truck of manure in the front door, you'd be like, oh, don't do that, don't do that. It's your job to stop these things. If you don't do that, what exactly is your job? Oh, I set strategy. No. If you can't hold the culture together to prevent these things, and yeah, I agree, sometimes they're natural parts of a business evolution, but understanding the destructive potential. I'm telling you, I mean, I've heard of people that like got pretty decent level jobs because they met the boss while he was like boasting in a bar. You want a job? You have a job. It's like Oprah. You have a job. You have a job. You have a job. And it's like creating these situations where you have these wholesale change outs of management and just destroying what was in the past.
I'm going to take us to the next bird because I think you started in on this one. I had on my list the oxpecker. Now, the oxpecker, it gets a free ride. So it's going to pick an elephant, it's going to pick a bison out on the Serengeti, and it's going to essentially live and ride on top of that animal. And it's a symbiotic relationship in that the oxpecker is picking the ticks and the flies and the fleas off of the large mammal. And in return, the large mammal protects and gives a free ride along to the bird. And I think there's a lot of examples where, as you said, the person that's in leadership is there not primarily because of the value they bring to the organization, not primarily because of the value they bring to the people that are on their team, but primarily because of the value that they bring to their leader. That essentially they are there to make the leader look good. They are there to remove the fleas and the flies from leadership, which in an organization to separate any concerns. Oh, that's not a concern that we're going to bring to his or her mind. We're going to leave that out of here. That's not important. And essentially creates a barrier between the leader that they are serving and the organization. I've interacted with executives at very large companies that have said as much. They've said, I'm in my role because I make that person look good.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, the only reason that I'm in this role is because my goal is to make that person look good. And you're like, wait, I thought you'd be here to help the customer or to help the business or to help the people in the organization. Nope. I'm here to make them look good. Like, okay, that's clearly an oxpecker.
I have a confession to make. I've been an oxpecker once in a while.
Okay.
And I had a guy I worked for, and I loved him. And he was such a good, decent human. Look, he did make pretty much all the right decisions when it came to the things in business and industry. Because of that, he was a total target. He would get so much done with so little money. I remember this one time, we had put out some campaign. It cost nickels, it was nothing. And the big boss is like, that's pretty good. I'm really impressed with this. But he CCs the unit manager for everything else, and he says, are we doing this well on all of our other initiatives? Oh, man. Oh, he just called in the cavalry. They all go into defense mode. I'm telling you, the dentist nearby made $1 million that afternoon putting new teeth in from people that ground their teeth down to their roots. Basically what he said was, we got these riffraffs over here that did this good job. Are you doing that good? And no, they weren't. They weren't doing that good. I ended up having to be in a situation more than a few times where I had to work my very best to make him look his very best. And I took that job super seriously. It was because I loved him so much, and I believed in what he believed in. Now, there's a difference, okay? There's that situation, and then there's the dude from Jim Carrey's The Grinch. Remember that movie? Did you see it? So,
I did.
So the mayor, really awful, terrible guy, is harassing the Grinch about the shaver, and the Grinch just pulls a shaver out and just and shaves the mayor right down the top of his head. And the mayor turns to his little oxpecker next to him, his little sycophant, and he goes, "Do something!" And the guy takes a shaver, shaves his own head down the middle.
Right.
We all know that dude. We all know that dude. I have seen incredible loyalty. And then I've just seen people that they're only there to pick the fleas and the ticks because that's what they subsist on, and they don't care about the host. And the second the host is somewhere else, they will find another one. They don't care. They are coin operated. Just sign them up where they need to go, and they will do it. And I think there's a major distinction between that. But I will say this, the people that I have felt that level of sacrifice and commitment for, at least in my view, they earned it. And I was happy to pick the bugs off of them.
I grew up in St. Louis, and the St. Louis Zoo, it's regularly rated as one of the better zoos in the country. The part that my family most appreciated is that it was free. Yeah. So we went there quite a few times. For anybody that's been to the St. Louis Zoo, there's one animal in particular that doesn't actually get put in a cage. They just let it walk around all day long, and it's the peacock. The peacock is just interested in showing off. It wants to be out. It wants to be seen. It wants to have its feathers out. It's not harmful. It's not dangerous. It's not going to do anything. We don't even need to worry about it leaving because it's just glad to be here, to be seen. I've worked for a few peacocks, I think, over my career where they really weren't going anywhere. They weren't going to do anything. They just wanted to make sure that if the spotlight was there, they were centered up and that they got to be seen by as many people as possible.
I love working with peacocks. Not if you're depending on anything, okay? If you're like depending on anything, if you need them to take like a brave stand on something or really grind hard and do an initiative, you've picked the wrong bird. But I will say this, of all the birds at the zoo, which one did everyone want their picture with? The peacock. We all love it. Oh, look, he's not even in a cage. How amazing is this? He's beautiful. That's great. He knows how to pose for pictures. Man, I love working with the peacock. We had this one guy. I just adored him. We would put him in front of meetings. Maybe we're doing a product release or something like that. And we would just bring him along because he looked like an actor. He really did. And he was always very well dressed. And he could give the, like, Rudy speeches. He'd just get up there and be like, all right, folks, we got to put a stake in the ground and move forward. And I mean, really move forward. We're going to sweat. We're going to hurt. But it's going to be worth it because we're going to win the game. And, like, you look around the room, people are like, yeah, he's really speaking to me. And we're like, dude, he's saying absolutely nothing. And then my favorite thing, he would make a point, and then he would say it again slightly slower. Like, listen, guys, this is about blocking and tackling. Blocking and tackling. And people would be like, yeah, blocking and tackling. There was utterly zero substance, and you still were like, Mom, can I get my picture with the peacock? That's just how it was. And so when I say I loved it, it's like, is that the guy I'm turning to roll out some industry-changing? No, I just want my picture with him.
Or help you develop your career. They're not going to help you develop your career.
No, but I'll tell you this, is if your stock price is up, okay, if you've done something good, all of a sudden, you're best buddies with the peacock. They're drawn to the shiny things. Right. When the peacock is walking around the zoo at night, it looks for where the lights are turned on so we can stand under. Right. Okay? Right. Oh, there's some attention over there. Let me go over there.
All right, what's another one on your list?
One of my favorite, okay? And I've seen this a few times, and again, it's kind of like the peacock. I don't necessarily dislike the situation. I think it's inefficient and hard for the company, and I think it limits opportunities. But more than anything else, I find it highly entertaining. And that is the peregrine falcon. So I grew up rock climbing down here in the South, and some of the mountains that we have around here, they have peregrine falcons, okay? And they are vicious. You get a lot of warnings about being near a peregrine falcon's nest because they will go crashing into you. But they will fly full speed and then, like, crash into you. And you get killed. All right, well, what is this nest they're defending? A peregrine falcon has the most embarrassing nest you've ever seen. It's basically like some trash they found pushed to the edge. So, you see all these other birds have these like, beautiful, elegant dress. It has a trash, but it defends it with utter ferocity. We all know that person. They have carved out their little ledge, and it just looks like a pile of trash. But beware if you get near it. Beware if you get anywhere near their pile of trash.
Yeah.
In my sort of business, I'll find someone that's got this like long-standing vendor relationship, and it's not really good. It's not really productive. You get near it though, and they're like, ah! They're balling into a ball and trying to crash into you. I've had these departments that are, they're operating in the 1980s, but don't you dare try to change anything they do, because they will defend. And look, I mean, they defend it because they're often attacked. And for a lot of us, we're looking at it and we're like, oh, that's stupid. That should be changed. The peregrine falcon didn't evolve that way because it was never attacked. It's always attacked. That's an important question to ask when you see this situation. When you see somebody with a death grip on some truly stupid process or something that's just like it needed to be modernized or something like that a long time ago, and you see this just death grip on it, what you're going to find is that death grip didn't come out of nowhere. They've been beaten and battered and all that. And I've had situations where I had to ball myself up in a ball and defend a peregrine falcon nest that was part of my oversight. And it's because when I went in and I ran the numbers, looked at it, it was worthwhile. Hey, it's some trash pushed to the side of the cliff. But the trash is still doing the job. You don't hear the baby falcons getting upset about it. It's still working. Just because it's not up to some other bird standard doesn't mean it doesn't work for this and it isn't making birds. So I can see both sides of it, which I think is why I'm not here going, oh, shame on those people. No, I get it. It's the creature of the situation. Yeah, the situation brought it about, and it's more one of these things that when you spot it, you kind of want to go in with a little bit of caution, unless you get pushed off the cliff, or you want to go in with a lot of empathy and be like, all right, how did this happen?
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we build on that of a creature of its situation, I put the owl down. And in my mind, the owl is the leader that is in the final years of their career. Maybe they used to be a vice president or they used to be a director, and now they're director emeritus. They're kind of there to be the wisdom of the organization. So they sit really high on the tree, and you don't really see them out and about very often. And where the angry bird comes in is typically they're angry at the organization. They're angry at the company. They're the bitter old engineer or the bitter old salesman that back in my day, and they tell all these stories, and you're supposed to go to them for wisdom. But oftentimes you just get questions. Like they don't answer the questions. They just ask you more questions. So that's where the who comes in. They don't answer any question. They just present it with more questions. And I have, over my career, come to love the owls.
Oh, me too. Me too.
If you sit down with the owls and you let them kind of blow off their steam and talk about how maybe they got pushed out or how they got marginalized, and you get past that, there's a ton to learn. I seek out the owls and say, you know what? I got to get past the bitterness and the angriness about the past or the organization. But man, there's so much that can be learned if you can come next to the owl, just say, hey, I want to learn.
Well, see, the owls that I encounter are not really bitter. The kind of owls that I get are just these old sages. I liken them to the owl character on Winnie the Pooh. He's just got all kinds of knowledge, and easily 25% of it is true. You go in, and the owl's like, well, has anyone thought about running anything in the Saturday Evening Post? You know, it worked really well when we did it, and it's a very well-read magazine. My favorite owls sitting up on the perch, just like handing out worthless knowledge. And I would say this, too, about the owls, is you're like, they're in the twilight of their career. A lot of these guys, I'm convinced, they retired like 5 years earlier and just didn't know to not come into the office. You know, and so a lot of them are always looking over their shoulder. They're like, is today the day? That's what they're doing. They're looking over their shoulder. That's why their heads can go all the way around, so they can find out who's behind them. You know, I would say that I totally agree with you on some of the wisdom part, But there's another value to it. If you want to get some attention, you can take a parrot. Everybody has a parrot, right? What if you took an owl?
Sure.
What if you walked downtown with an owl on your arm? I had a couple of owls, some that I very much loved. And when I find myself in a situation where I have to be the press liaison or something like that, I get my old glove out and I put my owl on my arm and I go walk out. And the press, particularly the older press that remember the owl from back in the day,
yeah,
what a beautiful owl you have. His feathers look so wonderful. And it's like, owls used in that situation are great. You know, if you've got a founder and they're only so involved anymore and you have some sort of event with the press, they want to see that person. They're not necessarily interested in the next generation. And that can be frustrating for all the seagulls and parrots and stuff like that, because they're like, yeah, have you seen the new Excelsior project or whatever their latest fad is? And the press all wants to go watch the owl hoot and spin his head all the way around. It's one of these dynamics about the owl, is that everyone loves to see an owl. You got to take them out in public and let everybody see it. And
I agree. As I was making the list, I came across another one that I was put back to a previous organization that I was in. And to frame up the organization, as companies get larger, as companies get bigger, as companies get more successful, it becomes more important to preserve the past than it does to take the risk of the future. And you actually get leaders that can move up faster by being the woodpecker and by poking holes in everybody else's ideas. It no longer is an organization that promotes risk. It's all about just sitting back and highlighting the risk that other people are taking. And so the woodpecker is hard-headed. It gives everybody else a headache. It's always poking holes in everything, identifying the problems with other people's ideas, but it doesn't bring a solution to the table. When it's done with its work, all you have is just a shredded concept or a shredded idea and a woodpecker that's full.
Oh, and you're not allowed to kill them.
That's right.
No, seriously, like down here, a bunch of them are protected. They get to like do all this havoc, and yet they're still protected. Luke Sullivan, a wonderful copywriter, wrote a book called Hey, Whipple, Squeeze This. He talked about anti-idea ideas. The quote from his book, he's like, I have an idea. Let's not do your idea. It's like,
yes,
that's somehow presented as an idea in itself. My idea is not to do his idea. Yeah, those people are absolutely a nuisance and regretfully super protected in a few areas. But I tell you what, if you go off that endangered species list, you woodpecker, you better look out. I got my BB gun at the ready, buddy. You know, one of the ones that I got my kids in on this, was geese. Because people, oh, how beautiful. You paint pictures of geese. Oh, how beautiful. And I explained to my kids why you have to have dogs on golf courses around here. And the reason why you have to be trained. Because a goose will bait a dog out into the water. Okay? A flock of geese will. They'll get a dog to chase them into the water. And then the geese will swim a circle around to it until the dog drowns. You don't hate geese enough. You need to hate geese a lot more than you do. They're just awful. They're just awful. And so I picked geese in here. My brother was in the technology industry for a while. And he said that they would move in flocks. One person would come in from one of these technology companies. And then next thing you know, they're all honking. Woo, 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 here they come. A whole V formation of them showing up and crapping on everything, causing all types of havoc, and being a lot nastier than you really would imagine. And so geese was on my list. They're kind of halfway between a cowbird and a seagull, but cowbirds and seagulls don't kill dogs, okay? That puts you on a whole new level there. Not a geese
That's
fan.
True. I went with the flamingo. And the reason I went with the flamingo, I actually didn't check this fact. I probably should have. But I've always heard that the reason that flamingos are pink is because of the shrimp that they eat.
Yeah.
They've ingested so much of the narrative. They've ingested so much of the company line that it just bleeds out of them. They can't help but be the company. I've worked at companies that actually talk about green blood or yellow blood. They're filled with the culture and they're filled with the narrative. So I have worked for a number of people that, man, they are all in. And I think what you would highlight, and I would highlight the same. There's sometimes where that's amazing, right? When when the culture is just dripping out of a person. There's other times where some really odd things are happening, but the leader just continues to defend it because that's what they've eaten on forever. I've had more than a few flamingos that I've worked for over the years.
My mentor, Bob, called that reading your own press releases. He's like, don't read your own press releases, because according to your press release, everything that you thought would happen did happen, and it's amazing and profitable and also lowers your carbon footprint. And so he was like, don't read your own press releases. I would say this, though. This is one of the hardest things that I've seen. When you see a flamingo, bright pink, standing on one leg, and then all of a sudden, they're kicked out of the flamingo pond. And they're not allowed to go back and eat the shrimp with the other flamingos. Somebody who ingests so much of the company shrimp that they're bright pink, and they thought that the organization was loyal to them, and then next thing you know, they're displaced. That is so heartbreaking. That is so absolutely heartbreaking. And I've seen it happen to my own father. My father was just, we were those kids in the 1980s that like wore the shirts. Dad would bring home the promotional shirts. We had the hats with the company logo on it and all that stuff. My dad was offered a job in New York, and we were living in Atlanta, and he was like, I just don't think this is right for my family. And that is not what you told a company of this kind in that era. You were up or out, man. And he was quickly out, but he was bright pink. He had eaten all the shrimp. He was living it. It was culture. Like, I used to go play in the distribution center as a kid. That's a hard thing, and I don't know that that gets talked about a lot, that you have people that really do buy into who you are. They are your biggest cheerleaders, and for whatever reason, that doesn't get tabulated on the special spreadsheet that the Seagull has when they decide that you get laid off. People are like, hey, business is hard, it's just business. Okay, well, what if we all treat it that way? Somebody wants me to stay after work so I can collect cans for the hungry or stuff like that? What am I supposed to say? No, it's just a job. Go pound some sand. How do you expect to foster loyalty in that environment?
I think there are fewer and fewer flamingos for that exact reason. I think as you look across the last 20 years, there's a lot of macro things that have happened, but I think one of the ingredients in the stew is loyalty in one direction, whether it be through pensions, whether it be through layoffs, whether it be through offshoring, whatever it is. Loyalty in one direction was fractured, and the byproduct is an entire generation has entered the workforce not expecting loyalty from their company and therefore not offering loyalty to their company. I remember, there's nobody that's going to remember this event, but my favorite baseball player when I was growing up was Tom Brunansky.
Okay.
He was outfielder. He had the most home runs, I don't know, maybe 1987 for the Cardinals, Tom Brunansky. He got traded, and I remember him saying, it's just business. And as a 9-year-old kid, you're like, no, it's not just business. This is my team. I'm invested in this thing. And now as an adult, as you see how a lot of organizations are run, you totally get it. It is just business. And so I think the flamingo is becoming more and more of a rare bird inside of the organizations. It's out of self-protection or self-preservation, because when the seagulls or the penguins are just running the spreadsheets, your emotional investment just doesn't show up in the raw calculus versus what is an offshore cost versus what is your cost as you've been here for so long. I like how you pitch the flamingo. It's not a pure negative, but I do think it's a receding or a retreating population for sure.
If you're in charge of people development, human capital, don't make promises you're not willing to live up to. Don't ask for loyalty you're not willing to deliver on. Because then you turn away some really bitter people. There's one thing to have a person leave because it was a time to mature their career or something like that. It's another thing to have a person leave who feels betrayed. I'll tell you, as a guy in the advertising and marketing business, the most pumped and ferocious I feel to really go for the soft parts of competitors is when I felt betrayed. If I was a seagull, that would be my poop on first person. Like if I had like a triaged list, that's where I'd be aiming first. And I'd eat a lot of Doritos beforehand.
Across my career, I've worked at a number of businesses. One of them in particular, during a decade of a lot of regression in market share, a lot of regression in market leadership. Ultimately, they closed up the factory and moved it to a low-cost state, laid off a ton of people. I was maybe a little too young to see it, but it was an organization in its own death throes, as you will. And as I look back, I now see the leadership type of the vulture.
Yeah.
The vulture shows up when something is dying, and leadership knows that it's dying. They see the macroeconomics, or they see the errors that have been made. They see the competitive marketplace, and they know it's dying. So they send in a breed of leader that doesn't tell you when they arrive, but they're essentially there to pick you clean as you die. They're there to help set a set of metrics, and we're going to squeeze it, and we're going to pinch it, and we're going to pull it so that it hits the metrics, either so we can shut it down or we can divest from it. And if you're not careful, you'll think that the vulture is there to help you.
Yeah.
He's not there to help you. He's there to help the shareholder to clean up the mess that was created by maybe the seagulls or maybe the penguins. But when the vulture shows up, they're going to be very focused on cost. They're going to be very focused on metrics. And there are actually large organizations, global organizations, that move their vultures around the world from one carcass to the next for the purpose of a tidy cleanup in which the original cause of death is maybe not able to be seen after the vulture has finished their work.
The vulture is there to engorge himself on the dead flesh of some other entity's unfortunate situation. That's what they're there to do. And they come in and they do that. Maybe there's some benevolent vultures out there, but I think there's some vultures that are just plain vultures, and managers that are expert vulture keepers. And what they do is they say, hey, I got to get this situation to work a certain way. I'm going to send in these 3 guys because I know they will pick this thing down to the skeleton, and that will open up other options for me where I might want to merge, or I might want to do this. And I know these 3 guys, just as a vulture can be counted upon to pick apart a carcass, I know these 3 guys can do it. But they may not be benevolent. That might just be their nature. They just come in and do dastardly things. I remember coming to this realization. And this guy is just terrible, just horrible behavior all the way around. And I remember being like, you know what? When the boss finds out about this, he's going to fire that dude. And then right will triumph. And then the boss finds out, and the boss finds out again, and the boss finds out again. And it's like, no. Sometimes people count on vultures being vultures. Sometimes
100%.
They expect the vulture to be a vulture because
they were placed there. They were placed there because they were a vulture.
They got to clean up the dead carcass. It's not a pretty job. You don't get a pretty bird. You don't get a peacock to do that. You bring in a vulture, and the vulture does what vultures do. It's not benevolent. It's not kind. It's just what it does. I had to come to this hard conclusion. I was like, if they only knew, and what I realized is they know, and they're counting on it.
Oh, they know. Both the person that sent them knows, and the vulture knows. I remember I moved into an organization. I met a manager that had been there for a while, and we were talking about our careers. He goes through the last 20 years of his career. Oh, I worked at this facility, and then I moved my family, and we went to this facility, and then I moved my family, and we went to this facility. And I remember saying, I'm not aware of any of those facilities. Oh, no, we closed all of them down. Every one of them we closed down. He was just a career vulture. The organization had seen that he was efficient in cleaning up carcasses so that you could sell the white bones. It's a lot cleaner to sell a skeleton than it is to sell roadkill. And so his job was to come in and pick the meat off and get it down to its bones, down to its skeleton, so that they could offload the skeleton. He knew that's what he did. He went to this factory and they closed it down. And then he went to this factory and they closed it down. And he went to this factory. And he had become very wealthy by being a good vulture.
Yeah.
Early in my career, I thought two things. One, does the vulture know what he's doing? Is the vulture self-aware? And two, do the people that sent the vulture, surely they didn't mean for this person to come in and gobble this whole thing up.
Yeah, they did.
Maybe I've gotten too cynical, but here I am at my mid-career with a podcast called Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL, and I am quite certain that everyone is fully aware of what's happening as the vulture moves from one organization to the next, picking it clean.
Before they even dispatched the vulture, they made a deal with the local Tex-Mex restaurant to sell the skull, okay? Before they even called in the vulture, like, what will you take for a steer head? They knew it. They know it. They know it. As a young person, don't labor for 10 or 15 years being like, hey, as soon as we get the new philosopher king that's just going to rule with justice and goodness in this company, then everything's going to be peachy. That person's not coming. We don't let those people be boss. We fire them. We transfer them to Siberia. We don't let those kinds of people be boss. If you're hanging around thinking that's going to be the transformative moment, you're going to be on the receiving side of some pretty nasty birds. Business is a hard environment. Look, some of the people that are tasked with protecting the value and the investments of the shareholders, as well as a place of employment, they have to make nasty decisions that I am unwilling to put myself in that situation any more than I'm willing to be the guy on the nuclear missile submarine that gets the choice whether or not to push the button. I don't want that decision either. Some people have to be in place to make these rotten decisions. I hope they can make them with sympathy and goodness. But sometimes you just got to dispatch the vultures to pick it clean, sell the bones, and start over.
All right, Jeff, I think we've saved one of the best for last here. I'll let you take your first crack at it. But we've got the crow. Tell me about the crow.
There's so many things about a crow that I find awesome. When you tell people how smart crows are, they're always surprised. When I think of crows, I think of two very specific behaviors. First of all, a crow is so smart it can hold a grudge.
For generations.
Talk about an angry bird. Hold a grudge. And then the second one is they steal. They hold grudges and they steal. I had a project that had come to me. It came to me from a peacock that I'd like. And he says, hey, I could really use your thinking on this. Could you help me out with a couple of concepts? And I did. And they were great. And nice, solid stuff. Well, he takes it down to the boss's office. And the boss loves it. The boss says, it's great, beautiful, let's go for it. But in doing this, he bypassed the department that this particular crow was running at the time. And this crow was holding a generational grudge. We had this shiny thing. It's a shiny little project, and all the crows wanted their hands on it. I get my updated contract, and I look in it, and it says, any concepts that you propose now belong to us, whether or not we act on them or compensate you for them. And I go back, and I'm like, this is insane. You crow? You're trying to steal the shiny thing and then pretend it's not a big deal. You probably heard the story of the Taco Bell Chihuahua. These guys came in and they presented this Taco Bell Chihuahua, and whoever at Taco Bell was like, not interested or whatever. And then years later, Taco Bell magically has this idea of this Chihuahua. And these guys sued them. And it was a big lawsuit, took a long time, and ended up yielding quite a bit of money. But you don't play fast and loose with other people's concepts. I got to tell you, that happens a lot, man. There's people in really, really well-known big corporations that happily do that all the time.
The most vicious version of an organization is when it's been taken over by a group of crows.
Yeah.
They're almost the alpha intellectual predator of the bird kingdom, if you will. As I think of the crow, I think of loud, I think of selfish, I think of wicked smart, I think of jealousy. This is an animal that is seeking first for itself above anything else, and has the wit and the wherewithal to manipulate the environment around it to create the circumstances that benefit itself. And I would even say, in my experience, the crow is more interested in benefiting themselves than they are the organization. They're more interested in promotion and compensation than they are benefit to the customer, as the case would be. I also would like to point, and this is where my bird research comes in, Jeff, you know what they call a group of crows, don't you?
I totally do. A murder.
A murder.
Yeah, that's appropriate.
A murder of crows, and it fits perfectly. As I was thinking about all of these, we didn't talk about the pigeon at great length, but to me, the pigeon is like the dumbed down version of the parrot and of the crow. Like the carrier pigeon is someone that they just sit mindlessly and somebody straps a message onto them. They don't even speak the message. It's just strapped onto them. They fly as fast as they can to deliver the message. The reason that I liked the pigeon is, if you remember, there was actually a project in World War II that was the pigeon guided missile. This was a project that was being run in parallel with...
It's so disturbing. It's such a disturbing thing.
It was being run in parallel with the Manhattan Project. They would put a pigeon in the nose cone of the missile, and it would have a picture of the target that it was aiming for and a window in the nose cone, and the pigeon would peck at different sides of the window, and it would actually change the ruddering on the missile. And so they were training pigeons for pigeon-guided missiles. The point is, pigeons deliver messages, and pigeons can be destructive, but they aren't intellectually participating in any of it.
Well, there's another element there. The pigeon in the missile is a perfect example, okay? Because the pigeon is expendable.
Yes.
The organization is like, hey, to achieve our goals, I'm totally fine with the pigeon blowing up with the boat.
Yes.
I'm fine with that. It's like sending a salesperson out with a clearly defective product. You know it's bad, and it's like, no, peck at the screen until we hit it. Peck at the screen. More than happy to destroy that person's selling ability or their career or anything like that, just as long as your objectives are done. And you're right. Pigeon doesn't intellectually engage it, but they are used as a disposable mechanism to carry out, well, in many cases, war and stuff like that. And it's awfully sad. It's awfully sad. You know, I think about people sitting in a call center somewhere trying to make a living, and the way they make their living is like defrauding old people on Medicare or something. Okay, I work in this call center. My job's to call these people and say I'm going to do this thing. But in the end, they're just a pigeon inside the missile, pecking away at the target, because the last 4 months when they pecked at the target, somebody gave them some sunflower seeds.
Right.
One more, and it is the pelican. The pelican is a top-level consumer. There is no limit to what the pelican can consume, or at the very least, what it will try to consume. And years ago, somebody sent me a video, and they're like, "Happy Easter." And it was like this little bunny hopping around the ground. Pelican eats and swallows the whole bunny. And I was like, it's awful! It's awful! Like, who does that? Pelican is just going to consume. You ever worked with one of those people? They will consume everything in front of them. Oh, you have that budget over there? Go, 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 go. Oh, we have these relationships? Go, 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 go. You know, this is opportunity. Go, go, go. They come through like a wrecking ball, consuming absolutely everything. There ain't nothing they won't try to gobble up. And I'll tell you this, it can be quite impressive, but from a distance. I don't want to get near the pelican's mouth, but wow, did you see it consume that whole turtle? That was amazing. I have seen those out there, and it never ceases to amaze me.
So, Jeff, as we transition here, the right question to ask, what is it that attracts these birds to various organizations? If you are in an organization that's full of crows or full of peacocks or full of pelicans, what is it that draws these different bird types to different organizations?
If you're sitting on the beach and you don't throw any food out, do you know how many seagulls are going to come over to you? Zero. Zero. They go where the available resources are. My children and I tried to build a owl house. We have a fruit orchard and a small vineyard, and we wanted to build an owl house, if anything, to scare birds that eat the fruit out and stuff like that. And we put it up there, and there's no guarantee that you can get an owl to roost at. It has to be a certain height and all that sort of stuff. But we built that with the express intention of attracting an owl. And then there was another situation where they had these bird houses you could attach to a window so your kids could watch a bird come in and lay an egg. Oh, real cute, right? A wasp moves in, built a beautiful nest. It's quite entertaining actually to watch, but it's like sometimes you build the habitat and what shows up ain't exactly what you think would show up. That habitat ended up being as good for a wasp as it would for a bird. Let me go back to the crows, okay? Because this is a really big, important thing. And not just the crows, but the peregrine falcons and all them. A lot of those people, that personality didn't leap fully formed from the head of Zeus, okay? We talk about a crow carrying a grudge. Some of those people have been really beat up by the game of life, or at least the corporate game. They've been looked over for things that they deserve. They've been on the receiving end of some pelicans and seagulls and all the other awful birds, and it's made them bitter, or it's made them hold a grudge, or it's made them defensive, and it's turned them into some of these situations. You know, maybe that old owl just felt pushed out by a cowbird and is only existing on the other side of the office hoping to spread some wisdom or validate some things from their previous career, some of which were probably great lessons that we need to know. But he might be sitting over there going, you know, that was really awful that they let that happen to me, that they let that guy come in and just deep six my career because he happened to be a buddy of this person or he parroted the right language of that person. We get the birds we make habitats for. Sometimes we get some other birds on top of it. A lot of it has to do with, do we manage it? If there's a woodpecker pecking on the side of my house, I'm going to do something to deal with it. If you're young in an organization and you're observing it, you should have a way to deal with the birds. When I see a peacock, I get my picture taken with them, but I don't try to train them how to do any tricks, okay? I know peacocks don't do tricks. When I see a vulture, I figure the smell of death is not too far away, right? And the organization is being put into a situation that would attract vultures and where vultures would be seen as beneficial. That's the charge for management, particularly executive management or the chief executive. You get what you build a culture for. And it is your responsibility. The buck does stop with you because a lot of the most dastardly birds are going to be in the upper ranks. Those are going to be the ones that set the pace. And not only that, is that the junior people, they're looking to what you allow, what you incentivize, what you prohibit, and what you punish. As a chief executive, if you punish everyone who contradicts what you say or brings you supposed bad news, and you reward people who just parrot whatever you say and read the press release out loud to themselves in the mirror, you're going to get a certain flock. You will. You will get a certain flock. It really comes down to that, and that's a hard thing to put on leaders, and a lot of leaders don't want that. But the truth is that the things that you allow, the things that you prohibit, the things that you reward, and the things you punish really, really shape an organization. And if you allow your organization to fill up with cowbirds and seagulls and all that stuff, you're going to wake up one day and find so little of what you actually wanted. And if you drive off all your flamingos, you may have to go get the plastic ones. And they're not as pretty. And they don't move. And you know what? If you had real ones in your backyard, your neighbors would be like, oh, look at your beautiful flamingos. When you have the plastic ones, it's because you're trash.
That's exactly right. An organization sets its own habitat.
Yeah.
The food that it lays out, the structure that it has, the temperature that it has, all the aspects of the habitat are going to attract a certain type of bird. But even with that, there will be a rare flyer that shows up. You can have an organization that is very healthy and collaborative and works well together. That doesn't stop a crow from making it through the interview process. That doesn't stop a parrot from making it through the interview process. But once that bird arrives in the habitat, to the exact point you made, as a leader, how do you handle it? Do you say, oh, well, they might change, maybe this was just a bad day for them? Or do you go and address it, not to the end of termination on the first instance, but do you address it and say, hey, that's not who we are? A lot of people think that culture is painting words on the wall, integrity, honesty, all the words that were painted on the wall at the Enron headquarters in Houston. That's not what culture is described as. Culture is described as the behaviors that are tolerated.
Yeah.
And I think the point that lines up with our stupid little analogy here, birds of a feather do flock together.
Yep.
Once you have 2 or 3 crows inside of an organization, or 2 or 3 cowbirds, or 2 or 3 pelicans, they're going to be the ones that are going to be increasingly selecting the next generation, selecting people coming through the interview process. It's very, very difficult to change an organization away from a murder of crows.
Yeah.
Why? Because the crows are picking the next leaders. And who are they going to pick? More crows.
They only propagate with other crows. Crows don't propagate with parrots. They propagate with other crows.
Correct. It's very difficult to work an organization out of a spiral that has already been taken over by one of these more consuming, selfish breeds of leaders. The other part that I think is important, and we didn't touch on it a ton in this episode, but we talk about it in other episodes, you aren't looking for an organization that is all one single species of bird or one single species of leader. The right organization is a menagerie of multiple different breeds that are gifted in different ways, whether it be having a peacock that can go out and draw the attention of the media, or, as you said, the founder that can go and tell the stories, and then a different type of a leader that's going to be more operational. There has to be a degree of understanding that not every bird is going to be the exact same as one another. But I think what we're trying to also point to is there are certain breeds of birds that it doesn't matter. You got to get them out. As soon as they show up, you got to get them out of there. I'm throwing the crows out.
You might not have any birds left, you know.
Oh, you'll have some birds. There's some birds. Jeff, it's so good. Always fun to joke around, have fun, talk about leadership, even through the lens of birds. It's been a wild 1 year. Lots going on in life, and it's cool to see Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL starting into its 2nd year. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, buddy.
For those with complaints, concerns, frustrations, or accusations, or if this episode ruffled your feathers, you can let me know where I went afoul by tweeting me. If, however, you enjoyed our management survey, a little birdie told me that any listener can submit their best Angry Birds of Management ideas to justin@grody.io. The most humorous, multi-dimensional comparison will win a limited edition Grody and Unprofessional drink coaster. But please, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Thanks for your time. Let's do this again soon.